Hey everyone, welcome to the Extra Mile podcast. We are shooting episode number 4 today, and we are actually very lucky. We have an awesome guest here today that I'm really excited to have here with us. Her name is Jill Sussman. She's a great friend, known her a long time. We've actually worked together in several different capacities over the last few years, and I'll let her explain to you guys a little bit about what she does and who she is.
You already said my name's Jill Sussman. I'm in real estate, been in the industry about 18 years. I started when I was 12. So I have I think I have 11 companies now that I run
gracious. I didn't even know that.
Operate. And so I have a brokerage, I have some investment companies and some other low-key things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So we're going to get into today's questions and get into some a little bit deeper dive here with Jill to talk a little bit about, some of the things that are challenges when we're going out and starting businesses and running multiple businesses and things like that. But there's a couple of things that I really want to make sure that we understand about you. And that's, with certain industries, there's common misconceptions, common misunderstandings. What is it that you find is something that people seem to misunderstand about you?
There's probably a couple of things people misunderstand about me. One would be, I think because I wear high heels and I wear lipstick and I care about, my nails and what I have on. I think people either think that I'm shallow or don't have a brain. So I really think it's very misunderstood that I'm a really deep, intense person.
Which I know.
I'm like a deep thinker. I'm a deep feeler, and I'm super intense. So I can be fun and playful, and I do like to adorn myself and take the best pride I can in the way that I look. But there are so many other layers to me than just that.
Sure.
I think that also one thing that people misunderstand about me, I'm really a straight shooter. I'm not a hint giver. I'm not there's nothing to read into what I say. What you see is what you get. I'm actually really bad at receiving hints and giving them as well. So sometimes it's really kind of challenging in the management realm because I would just come right out and say what the problem is, and people are like, whoa, there's no soft delivery, no. So I think people misunderstand that about me as well. I'm not a hint.
Direct.
Yeah, I'm extremely direct, and there's nothing to read into.
If you think I'm trying to say something to you, I didn't, and I'm not. I would have said it. Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that, though, because I've seen tons of business and working relationships impacted by that, where the kindness of somebody that you're working with of the opposite sex comes on as flirting and comes on as I'm interested in you, but all the while you were just trying to be kind.
Probably the craziest thing ever of a man thinking that I was hitting on him was I took my ring off. So I have an on and off relationship. Sometimes I take my ring off, and I have it off now. And I took it off during the course of months, and he later on said to me that he thought that I was coming on to him by taking my ring. Wow. I'm like, seriously? Honestly, I don't know how you could even read into something like that. I really don't. I mean, unless it's a conversation that you've had with that person and it's an inside thing.
Right.
But it was not the case.
Unless you're in conversation with them and you're like.
Right. Or you've had a previous conversation where if you ever see me take my ring off, then
none of that was the case. Exactly. So. But it's funny because I've seen numerous relationships like that where they started out working really well together, and then of course it was impacted because one thought one thing and the other. So, but I'm glad that you mentioned that, because communication is something that I think cannot be researched and the work can't be put in enough, because I feel like if you're trying to, especially when you're running multiple businesses, you have to put the effort into understanding how you need to communicate with specific people, because when you're building a team, everybody needs that communication a little bit differently. Clients need the communication differently. So it's important to understand not only what you tend to give, but what other people want to receive as well.
And I am obsessed with personality theory. Yeah. So I love the way people think. I love other people, not just me, but the way that other people receive information. I love all that. And I've studied that to the nth degree. But there are some people that are outliers, that
Yeah.
that you still kind of, especially for me too, because I tend to be so direct. If you're the type of person that reads into everything, like that's really when I have the most friction with someone like that.
Yeah. That's the assumptions can really hurt people.
Yesterday,
So.
I was on a call and I was trying to listen to something, and I walked out of the room where the call was going on, but I wanted to listen, and someone started like crinkling bags, and I was like, shh. And later on, they came back and they were like, I don't like the way you talk to me. And I was like, seriously, like I just was trying to listen to the call. Like I was not trying to belittle you or any of those things. Like I just, so that's somebody who like tends to take things really personal and looks into everything, like, you know, and it's hard for me to
See, and it's funny you say that because I've been, like, over the last few years, I've put a lot of work into making sure that when I'm in conversation with somebody and I think somebody's being rude, I will directly ask. And I'll say, you know, I apologize, I don't mean to interrupt, but it sounds like you're trying to undermine me, or you're trying,
I love that.
That's not how you meant that, was it? And then I just jump right in,
nice.
hit the nail on the head. I'm like, listen, I give them an opportunity to either confirm that they're doing that or backpedal and change their
That's
behavior.
brilliant.
So
I might take that.
I can't
one.
take credit for that. That was Pamela Jett, Remarkable Communication Skills was the book. So if you guys are looking to improve on that, definitely look up that book. It's an awesome book. But yeah, that couple, things about how to correct behaviors, but not just correct behaviors, but get confirmation for the behavior as it should be, and making sure that you've got their confirmation on that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot in that book that really helps. But again, communication was huge. Now I want to go back to what you said at the beginning of the answer, which was taking pride in the way that you look and the way that you dress and things like that. Now, I notice a lot. Well, we've had conversations before. We've actually spoke at detention centers together, and I know that you have a high level of self-love, okay? And that we've talked about how powerful that can be in the workplace, but that also goes back to you taking pride in the way that you look, because you deserve that, right? You deserve the time spent to, pick out the right outfit, do the nails, like that kind of stuff too. You deserve that as well. It's not just something that you're giving everyone else. It's a sense of self-love, self-pride, self-confidence for you as you step out that door.
Yeah, I think it's really important for a woman to take really good care of herself. And, if she doesn't take really good care of herself, nobody else will.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I learned way early in childhood, that nobody was coming to get me. And so if I didn't take care of myself, that nobody else would.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. We'll get into that a little bit later, but you're right. That mindset has created a lot of irrational and self-limiting beliefs for a lot of people. But the one thing that I wanted to ask you was like about that self-love. Like, how have you seen like your self-love, and how have you seen the lack of self-love in other entrepreneurs and other business leaders impact their ability to do business or their just confidence in the ability to go out and grab work, grab sales, things like that?
Self-love, wow, it's kind of a funny concept to place it into like the working relationship, but I guess it is kind of all the same.
Yeah.
For me, I think early on I started working really hard because I actually equated money to self-worth, and I didn't necessarily have the self-love piece yet.
Right.
I still honestly struggle with that every day. I tend to be codependent, which is really where I've really put more value in like what you think of me, or I'm a people pleaser, that kind of thing. So that's gotten me into a lot of trouble in the past. And it puts me into a lot of depression because I don't know if you've ever heard of a locus of control. So some people have an external locus of control and some people have an internal locus of control, which is just basically how you feel about yourself based on what other people think.
So what would you say I have then in regards to that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I that's a good question.
We'll have to dive deep into that some other time, but
I think you could probably be driven by both sometimes. I don't know, in the past, maybe
much more earlier on did I care about what other people
probably
thought.
external.
Now,
Yeah, that's what I'm
I
saying.
love you guys out there, but you could
like-
say what you want about me. I'm still going to do this.
Like maybe you're converting a little bit at this
Yeah.
point to be more internal, which is a beautiful thing. So I've tended to have an external locus of control most of my life. And I really admire people deeply who have an internal locus of control. Like to me, it's like it's incredible to watch because it's always been so external for me. So it's something that I've always worked on, is trying to working on that internal locus of control and getting into what drives me and what's important to me. And that's always had a place. But I guess it's just which one is the dominant.
Right.
So I think self-love is something I've always struggled with. Like
It's interesting because you definitely, gave the discussion at the detention center, with enough knowledge and information about it that I think they had a very good understanding when you were finished, focusing on that self-love for them, because I do think that's a huge part of it. It creates a lot of self-limiting
logically
beliefs.
and
Yeah.
intellectually,
Yeah.
it's easy to say.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
But to
Sure.
actually
And then
embody
everything.
it, and then it really is an everyday struggle. Like
Yes.
it's like
I was gonna
every
say,
day.
everything is
yeah.
a
And so
constant
you can wake up in
progress.
the morning and start with the bullshit, in your mind, and then you've got to go, okay, stop that. I've got to move on and get back into like, okay, I know I got this. Like saying nice things to yourself,
That's right.
Especially
Those
as a
positive
woman,
affirmations.
it's so easy as a woman to feel like you always have to be pleasing a man. And it starts early. It starts with your dad. Dad, I love you. If you listen to this, like we're in such a good place now. But as as a kid, like it starts early with
Sure. Yeah.
trying to get approval and trying to get it right and trying to get attention and so.
It's funny. Yeah. So exactly what you're saying, obviously, and I don't know, like, at what point I'm going to go really deep into my past on the podcast, but I've mentioned it a few times. And as a result of my behavior at a young age, I was constantly told that, I'm never going to amount to anything. I'm never going to. But what's funny is I really don't think that there was ever a point where I stopped listening to others, because it just became a moment where all I listened to was myself. You know what I mean? Like all I listened to was me, about what I thought about me. And I just said, you know what? Like there was the positive affirmations, especially. Like I would tell myself weird things like I'm a very punctual person. I'm late to a lot of stuff, but like I would tell myself this, and I would start to like convince myself that I was going to be a very punctual person. And Brian Tracy talks about this all the time, and he said he had people in his groups and his audience say, "Isn't that lying to yourself?" And he's like, "No, it's telling the truth in advance." So
I like that.
So that's what it was for me, is like trying to create basically like not somebody else, but the best image of me and what I wanted from me. Because there are things that other people think are really great qualities that I don't want to really be a part of me. I have my own person, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to be the best version of Mr. Brightside. I want to be the best version of Bobby Jones.
So for me, I think I agree. I also want to be the best version of myself as well. And I think that sometimes that requires feedback.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, I listen to too much feedback maybe at times in my life, but always just wanting to improve and being so introspective that I just want to always be evaluating that feedback. And
There's a thin line there.
Yeah, definitely. And then when you have people that are really close to you giving you feedback, sometimes they're people that shouldn't be close to you and that you shouldn't be listening to their feedback. And that's when the damage really kind of starts.
It really does.
So making that decision, I think, at that point, to listen to yourself is what's important.
So I think for me, especially like big picture, I really don't care what people think. Small picture, like I want to improve. I want to know the feedback. Like what could I have done better? So yes, you're right. There's a line where you have to understand what's coming as feedback and what's coming as hate, and knowing when to turn it off and when to listen to it.
Yeah,
so it's
because-
deep. It is
yeah.
deep. But again, going back to that self-love and that self-confidence, is like you can, like that, I think that part of it, a good level of self-love and self-belief and like that self-confidence allows you to know the difference between the two.
Yeah, and well, it takes me back to the internal locus of control people. They don't always have the ability to grow. So while I admire them very deeply, sometimes they're stuck where they are because they don't have any feedback coming from anywhere else. They don't know what else they need to do different. So I'm happy with where I'm at. I'm happy with being able to evaluate how people feel and then just kind of checking in and saying, is that true for me? Yes or no? And then growing from there. So self-love is something that I'm always working on every day.
Gotcha.
It's an everyday struggle.
So I got to dive deep into this locus of this external locus of control.
Locus of control.
I gotta do some research on that.
Yeah.
First. So, all right. So I want to get into a couple of other things that I had listed here. I came up with some decent questions that I think that I really wanted to hear your answer on. So
do you ask everyone the same questions?
No.
Okay.
Oh, no. These are all unique.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and it's been cool. So once the podcast, you start to see some of the videos released, there's some real cool topics of conversation conversation for each person that's really special to them. So, again, we have talked quite a bit about, especially like mistakes, things like that we've done, especially in our
Yeah.
youth, right? And so one of the questions I really wanted to ask you was, how has regret influenced like your day-to-day decision making? Like the things that we did wrong back then, like how does that play into what you do today?
I don't necessarily call it regret. Do you call it regret?
Yeah, there are definitely yeah, there's
Really?
definitely some things that right. I'm very grateful for the lessons I learned from it all. However, some people got, impacted along the way. And that part of it for me is things that I regret, right? Because I wasn't always the best person. I wasn't always best behaved in school. And for me, like those parts of it are regret. Now I learned a lot along the way, so I'm very grateful for those lessons. But yeah, I certainly wish that there was some things I could change a little bit differently about back then.
I don't have a ton of regret.
Okay,
I
cool.
don't. I now there are things that I know could have been different and things that maybe could have been better. But I don't regret is not something I typically feel. I
Okay.
feel like everything happens for a reason
I believe in that big time.
and sometimes have you read The Obstacle is the Way?
No.
It's a really good book. Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way. I just read that. I read probably 6 books in the last week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have a problem.
Now, is that like audio or is
Yeah,
that
audio,
okay,
and
me
I listen
too.
on fast forward.
Okay.
So,
Wait, what?
yeah, I listen. We never talked about this.
No way.
I listen in fast forward. This morning I started Rocket Fuel, another good one for you.
Rocket fuel.
But it's like 2.5 hours on ×2 speed. Yeah, sorry, I can't.
So my brother talks really fast, so I would probably be conditioned to be able to retain this
It
information.
takes a
but
little while. Start at 1.5
Yeah.
and then move up, as you go. But
she's a professional.
Yeah, and
She's
it's
a
a-
professional
it
audiobooker.
depends on the speaker too.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
some speakers actually, I think they slow some people down
know.
sometimes, like to
Brian
make the
Tracy.
book longer. Yeah, I gotta speed it up. I can't tell that long. In fact, I get mad when there's videos on Facebook and because they don't have fast forward option. I'm like, I can't sit here for 20 minutes.
So it's interesting. So that it's funny because we've got a lot of similarities. However, I feel like a lot of what powers us and fuels us today is a little different because for me, my big why is I want today to do as much good as I can because of all the bad that I've done. You know what I mean? Like, so for me, those regrets actually fuel me. And they say, hey, listen, I want to go out here and impact as many people as I possibly can in the most positive way I possibly can. And that's like my why. Like that's what gets me up every single day and gets me to different nonprofit and charity events and
So
different
I have a
efforts.
deep desire to create an impact as well.
Right.
But I think for me, it's more about people. It's sort of the
Sure.
same, but not because I have regrets
Right.
and things like that. I just like for instance, my son. Like I look at him and he has a hard time in school. He's having a really hard time with conformity and doing it the way that everyone thinks it should be done. And sometimes that happens when you're like a very forward thinker or when you just don't think like everybody else. And so he's also misunderstood, And so I think it's invaluable that I have the ability to be his mom and understand him and build his confidence, even though there's all these systems and processes pulling on him that says that he doesn't fit in and he should be over here. And, so nobody did that for me. Nobody really said, well, nobody did that for me.
So,
But I don't have any regrets.
there's a lot of holes in the way that our school systems operate, and it doesn't focus on the individual strength nearly as much as they really should. And as a result, I mean that's one of the reasons for me. I was so bored in school that I just started acting
Yeah.
up, but I was a forward thinker as well. And so like
You
for
see.
me, I figured out the whole math thing before anybody taught me how to do it. I did it the wrong way, but I got the right answer.
But you got the right answer.
So,
Exactly. And my
yeah.
son too. Like he doesn't want to he doesn't want to put all his work out. I was the same. Like who wants to take their time and go through those little details? Now, when you look at something like that, reading this morning, I'm reading Rocket Fuel, and it talks about visionaries and things that visionaries are really not good at. And so he's probably a visionary. Like he doesn't want to get bogged down with the details, And so it's kind of cool that I can help him through that process. But I think What was the question, Bobby?
Well, actually, we've kind of moved on from that one. It was about
The
the
regret.
regrets and how has it influenced like
Yeah.
what you do
I
today.
I, I think
So, do you think that there's nothing about like what you've accomplished that is basically in an effort to prove like people wrong about you? Like,
I mean, there was some of that, but there's also the very tangible element of like needing to eat and needing a
sure,
car
yeah, yeah.
in the state that we live in.
Yeah,
And
it starts with that.
yeah,
Right.
I mean,
but 11 businesses, that's not just putting food on the table. That's, that's positioning you and your family.
but I guess what I'm trying to describe just with my son and all is that like those things that happened as a child for me were symptoms of who I would become. So people didn't know how to manage it then. Nobody was there to be like, hey, buddy, sit down and this is what you need. There wasn't anybody to really, and even my parents, like,
Would you have listened?
I probably wouldn't have listened. But this is the thing. This is why I have no regret, because it had to go exactly. I tend to be really hard-headed. Are you hard-headed?
Yes.
I tend to be
Extremely
extremely
stubborn,
hard-headed.
yeah.
And so sometimes I got to get hit in the head to learn something. God,
Ooh,
just kidding,
I've
universe.
added some questions off of that comment now. They're logged
I'm
in
not.
here.
I'm not taunting the universe here. I don't need to literally
no.
be hit in the head, but sometimes I like it takes a lot for me to learn a lesson.
Yeah.
So I'm not crazy religious, but I do believe in spirit and the universe, and I think that the universe organizes itself in such a way that you really learn the lessons you need to learn if you're open to receiving them.
Yeah, the way things have played out for me, it's far too
Orchestrated.
far too orchestrated is a great word to be coincidence.
That's how I look at it too.
So,
yeah. So no regrets.
Yeah. All right. So awesome. Now you mentioned your son being a visionary. Would you consider yourself a visionary then in that way?
At this point, after I read that book, it's given me permission to actually, they give a test, and then there's points, and so I'm owning that right now. I'm a visionary.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
you
then,
asked me yesterday, I wouldn't
really?
say,
See, I caught you on the right day.
Yeah.
So then going back, right? Let's talk about like your businesses, the different businesses, and as you started, like let's say your real estate career, right? When you first sold your first house or passed the exam or whatever, did you ever envision what you're doing today?
I always wanted to be Donald Trump.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Not who he is today. That's not what I mean.
Or not the picture that's painted yet.
No. But when I was a kid in the 90s, he was driving helicopters, flying. He was living the fabulous
Right.
life.
Let's, people can, real quick, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but we could say everything we want about that man today, but let's be honest, before he was president, that man was definitely glorified in business, was very highly regarded. I mean, in hip hop music all the way to, universities and so. Right. We saw this image of this very successful, very advanced entrepreneur and an entrepreneurial mind. So I totally understand that.
Yeah, and so he modeled for me what I wanted my life to be like. So really, I've always wanted to be a real estate investor. That's honestly what I wanted to do. So yes, I've always had that vision.
Wow. Okay.
But I did not ever want a brokerage.
Really?
Yeah, that wasn't one of the things I ever wanted. I became a real estate agent because I wanted to go look for my own properties. I didn't want to bother anybody. I didn't want to, hassle with anybody else. So that's really why I got my license. And then it kind of just grew organically. People started to find out that I had a license, and they'd be like, hey, can you represent me? And then before I knew it, I was doing 50 transactions a year. And so that's really how it happened.
That's awesome. And then so the brokerage was... What year? How many years are you into the brokerage now?
I'm starting my second year now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats again.
Thank you.
So that's so cool. So, all right. So you didn't see yourself doing that. At what point did you say, okay, I'm going to do this brokerage? And like, was there anything that kind of pushed you over the fence on that?
Yeah. Sky Realty was really born out of necessity. I was with a brokerage. I was a broker at a brokerage I didn't own. And I was at a company for almost 17 years. Some local real estate investors who taught me tons.
Yeah.
But like even today, listening to the Visionary, the Rocket Fuel book, talking about visionaries, Rocket Fuel.
I was gonna send you a couple of dollars for all those shout outs because no, that's good. Rocket Fuel. I'm gonna check it out.
It just talks about like organizations and how they should be organized, basically. So there should be a visionary and then implementer. It's not implementer. It's called something else.
Somebody to like balance it.
Basically implementer, but it's called something else in the book. So it's like the visionary and then the person that puts like the vision into place, right? So I was the person that put a lot of the vision into place, but I also overlapped into visionary at the organization. And the lines were always blurred. There was not a lot of support. Like it was growing and it needed more structure. And as hard as I tried, you know, we just couldn't get there with the structure. And, you know, and I couldn't get along with everybody anymore because of so many lines being blurred. You know, it's really hard to manage a team of people if you don't have a title. You know, if nobody knows what your role is, and when you have such growth, people change so rapidly. You know, roles change so rapidly. You really have to kind of keep up with it.
That's huge. Yeah, to scale the business and scale the position, scale the responsibilities. Yeah, all those things are extremely important.
So then, of course, my vision kicks in, and I'm like, okay, this is where we should go. This is what should happen next. And after 17 years, I mean, I'm entitled to have a vision for the company. You know, like
17 years.
You can't help it after that long. You know, so I think. As I began to grow as a visionary, because I had started some businesses on the side, and I had, you know, been working on some of my own businesses. And as I began to grow as a visionary, I started to really kind of bump heads with the person that's supposed to be the visionary. So there's just it was a perfect cocktail of like just anxiety and stress and not being able to mold this thing the way I wanted to, and you know, really not having cohesion anymore with the whole organization. So I lost my shit one day and I was like, I quit. So
that makes total sense though. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the communication too, is like making sure that different roles, responsibilities, expectations are clearly communicated and put out there too. And it seems like, you know, once the roles kind of overlapped for you, the responsibility overlaps, and then like where does that stop and end, and where does somebody else pick up this, you know? So because then I see a lot of times that person ends up doing the job of 3 or 4 people, and those 3 or 4 people are at the golf course like
and the book actually talks about how it's such a thankless job. Like if you're the implementer, you know, that it's such a, and it really is. I mean, and it can go really unnoticed what you're doing because you're always in the back, like taping things together and like gluing pieces together.
It's a difficult position to have too, because I feel like the goals are somebody else's. Like the action steps that you have are somebody else's goal.
Yeah. And you don't always see eye to eye about it, you know, and so it is what it is. You know, I just lost it one day. I just couldn't take it anymore. There was some.
Yeah, but I mean, those are the bumps in your head you were talking about, right? Those are the experiences that,
Thank you for that, Bobby. Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So I had to do something. I had to hang my license somewhere, and I just figured, why not just open a brokerage?
Nice. Awesome. Well, again, congrats on that. It's funny because, you know, I think people get so discouraged by like the failures along the way, and like the road to success is literally littered with failures. I mean, Absolutely. You're going to see them.
It's really, I would say, in order to get through the road, it's your ability to actually get up and dust yourself off. And every time you fail, like every time you fall down, you got to be able to get up and start again.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
resilience.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it's funny because here I'm like definitely like the visionary. I have these big dreams, and my brother, who is like the total opposite of me, is like he'll show me every.
That's beautiful.
And I need that, and that's the way my wife is as well.
That's really awesome. Yeah. That person tends to be a little bit pessimistic. You should read it, but it's like Walt Disney and Roy Disney.
Oh, really? So we're reading Be Our Guest. So on our customer service side, we're all reading Be Our Guest right now, the Disney book. So it's we're trying to make sure that we're
with
taking
the business of Disney.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's phenomenal. Yeah. There was a movie not too long ago too that I watched, and I think it was like, I can't remember the name of it. I think it was called Mickey or something like that is the name of the movie, and it's actually really good. It tells the story of Walt Disney, and resilience. Like when you talk about resilience, like it's so funny how like some of the most iconic people in business that we talk about all the time, like got bumped on their head like 30 times a day. Like this guy was getting evicted from like different offices, like all kinds of stuff. Like on his way was told he wasn't creative enough. Like what? Disney? Like so, and then like who's the other one? There was a book about like resilience, and they were talking about how like Abraham Lincoln, I think he ran for office like something crazy like 70 something times, and of those 70 times only like 4 or 5 times he actually won a seat in office.
Oh, he
like,
had a number of failures leading up to when he finally won. Yeah.
How many of us, like, I mean, we
And
see
you talk
all the
about
time.
that kind of preparation, okay? So that's sort of what I mean about not having any regrets. I mean, that kind of preparation to have developed that kind. He's in the book The Obstacle in the Way. I think you wrote that down already.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
they talk a lot
That's
about
so
him.
funny.
But just the preparation of like knowing how to handle all those failures and losses. He lost his wife just before the election. Like, I mean, it's incredible. Like, it was really life preparing him for what was to come.
Yeah. And I think, if there's one thing that the people on the other side of this camera have to understand is like, this comes with hardships. This comes with
absolutely.
a lot of hard work. It is not easy. So, I mean, are there things like along the way that are more specific to your like learning yourself on business ventures and things like that you've done, or maybe even a real estate investment or anything like that you really didn't win and was a failure? And
I haven't won a lot of times.
Right, that's how it works. Can you expand on something that was just
Let me think. Specific?
outside of the successes?
I mean, quitting my job pretty impulsively was probably pretty silly.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I just really lost my shit and just was like, and I was totally unprepared.
Was there fear associated though at that time? Like once you quit, were you afraid?
No, I wasn't afraid. I mean, that's the thing that life has prepared me for. Like, I kind of know, knock on wood, I can handle anything. Like at this point, I'm not taunting you again, universe.
Yeah, really.
But I have the ability to pull it together pretty
Yes.
easily. And I could have always just gone and got another job,
Sure.
It's like,
It's funny. I talk about this all the time, but I think one of the reasons why I move so fearlessly is because I've been broke. Like I've been broken in the trailer park and living on state assistance. Yeah. No, it's not fun.
Oh, but you're okay with it.
I was good at that too.
Yeah, you know.
So for me, I'm like, look, I'm gonna go full speed ahead with this. If it doesn't work, I'll just go back to being broke and try again. So for me, it doesn't scare me.
Yeah.
So every time there's this risky move that I'm making, everybody's like on the edge of their seat. I'm like flying in with my seatbelt off and like, hands in the air, like I'm ready to go. And, calculated and obviously researched, but at the same time, I'm so convinced that there's success, there's so much success on the other side of that fear that like I've grown to love fear. I've grown to love losing. I've grown to love failure because I know what's coming on the other side of that.
So no regrets. Let me just make sure I say that. No regrets. I don't regret any of it. But I wouldn't call it a failure, but I did let them get the best of me instead of actually planning it properly and creating a timeline that really worked. It was very emotional. Yeah. And not obviously like it was calculated and I knew I could handle it at that point, but I shouldn't have let them push me to that. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah. But again, though, like one of the things, and it's funny because this comes from a guy that will be on the show soon, a roofer, but a real estate investor. I mean, I think he owns like 146 residential properties or something like that. And he told me he's like half the investments I've made have been emotional. And so like I'm reading books and they're like, don't get emotionally attached to homes that you buy to flip and renovate or rent and things like that. And I'm like, wow, this dude, like he said, I've looked at properties that were almost identical as investments and said no to one and yes to the other just off my gut feeling. And I'm like, man, so for me, a lot of times, like if I feel good about something, I'm just doing it. Like if the numbers make a little bit of sense and I feel like there's enough upside, I'm going to do it just off of my own personal interest and emotional attachment.
Yeah, of course. I'm really trying to cultivate and get better at listening to.
Yeah, and manifest that too, because a lot of people get afraid of that emotion, I think too. But my point in that is like that is attached to your happiness, it's attached to your self-love, it's attached to all of that. The moment that that stuff gets impacted at that other job, then it starts to impact everything. Next thing you know, conversations at home change, conversations with your son, like all those things are attached to how you love and your happiness. So
Yeah.
a couple of other guests, we've really been talking about like the pursuit of happiness over the dollar, which you actually really started the opposite direction. In the beginning, you said you were chasing that dollar, of course, to put the food on the table, right? So, but now it's more about that smile.
Now it's more about happiness. Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I can dig it. All right. So let's get into a couple other quick questions. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was like, I know we've talked about like where we've come from, like what we've done. One of the questions that are consistent across all guests here that is asked to every single person that comes on the show is the name of the podcast is the Xtra Mile Podcast. The reason for that is, for me, everything that is happening today, I can trace back to one moment in time where I really went the extra mile and it had long-lasting impact on my life. Is there something like, again, I know we chatted a little bit about this before, but is there something in your life where you feel like you going the extra mile, whether that's across multiple things or one specific moment, has really just given you the competitive edge over somebody else?
Have you ever heard the way you do one thing is the way you do everything?
Oh yeah, I have.
Yeah. So I just think that
That's Grant Cardone, right? Is that Grant? Or John Maxwell? It's one of those two. Something like that.
I don't think it's Grant Cardone.
It's one of them too. Or somebody. Go ahead.
I actually think it's Tony Robbins or somebody before him.
Okay.
It's old.
Yeah.
It's
some
very
people are
old.
just recycling it now.
Yeah, people are
But yeah,
recycling
but
it.
it's true. It's true. And I want to say that this has been a conversation lately with a couple of other people, but the way you do one thing is how you do everything. Go ahead and expand on that.
Yeah, so the way you do one thing is how you do everything. I tend to be a bit of an extremist, and I'm a bit obsessive. So if I want to accomplish something, then I'm going to go in full on, and I literally can't think about anything else. So it's just been a series of that in my life. So if I wanted to be the biggest weed smoker, if I wanted to
You're going to go all out.
Yeah, if I wanted to be the biggest failure and drop out of school, I'm all in, I'm all out, you know. And then if I decide I want to get a job, now I'm at the job every day for the next 5 years. You know, if I decide I want to read every day, I'm reading 6 books a week, you know. So it's like it's the way you do something is the way you do everything. And I can't pinpoint it like you. I wish I could. I wish I could call some like really specific.
No, but I think you are answering my question. You're telling me that the approach to everything you do is extra, like you have to go the extra mile with everything you do.
Yeah.
And I like that. Now I want to ask you something because I challenge this a little bit, and here's why. When you were talking about exactly what you wanted to do, like if I wanted to do something, if I wanted a job, if I wanted to be the best way, like, so if that was something that you wanted, but what happens when the task is placed onto you? Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, so
depends on the circumstance.
Right. So it's the things that we really, because that's how I am, but it's with the things that I truly want to do. Like, there are things about my job I don't want to do, and I hate doing them. And when
you should delegate them.
I do most of them, but there are some things that you just can't get out there, or I have to jump in and do. And so, like for me, I'm not sure I do those with the extra mile approach. You know what I mean? Because it's not something I want to do, whereas the things that I truly want to do and enjoy, I go all the way in. I talk about it shamelessly. I breathe it. Like those things that I truly enjoy and want to do, I go the extra mile on, and I do it that way. So when you say how we do one thing is how we do everything, I could tell you like the things that I'm passionate about, I do much differently.
I mean, I think it's the same for everybody. But do you have an example?
Sure, I do. So, for example, I love my business. I love helping, right? But I have to, like, mow my grass in the summertime, right? I have to make sure those things are done. I don't love doing it. I don't want to do it.
But when you do it, do you edge it? Do you, like, clean up all the clippings?
You're my neighbor. You know I don't do that.
I mean, your yard looks better than mine.
So for me, like, there are some things that you have to do that I just don't, like, I don't put, and maybe that's a fault, right? Maybe I should be a little bit more of that mindset where how you do everything is how you do one thing is how you should do everything. But I find myself, so for example, right? this is funny because, we talk about happiness and self-love and things like that. One of the few things that can control my happiness outside of myself is the Philadelphia Eagles. Man, I let them guys control way too much of my happiness, right? So, and let me tell you, there's a lot of heartache on the other side of this fanship. But so for me, but like, I'm a fan. I love the team. I go all in. If you go like in my basement, like I went the extra mile with everything I did in my basement. It's all Eagles. This is all Eagles that, because it's passionate for me. For me, I care. Like I passionately pursue that, and I'm a passionate fan, but I'm not a fan of my lawn. You know what I mean? Like, and that's so that I think that's the difference for me is like there's some things that I just I'm not going to put that same amount of energy and enthusiasm into,
I think,
versus the things I truly love and enjoy.
So for me, I think it's like I'm really driven on what's right, right? Like, what's the right thing to do?
Yeah.
The right thing to do is to mow your grass, right?
Yeah.
And keep your lawn clean.
Right.
Yeah. So I think if you're focused on, for me, like what's right, what's the right thing to do, then if I'm going to do it, I mean, I think it was my first grade teacher. She was like, if you're going to do it, you should do it right.
Yeah, that's true. Darn it. Now I'm going to go out and buy all the fertilizers and all the different edgers for my lawn. No, I'm having it looking sharp though.
No, but okay. So just.
But it was interesting to hear you say like the things that I want to do.
You're right. But to
have,
take it back to a more granular sort of perspective is like the way you do something is the way you do anything. If you start something, you finish it.
Yes.
You know, these type of rules. Like if you're gonna do it, you do it right. You know, if you're gonna I'm trying to think of examples. Like my son, if he's gonna do his homework, he needs to take his time and write his words out correctly. You know? So I think it's at a more granular level than just like you want to do it or you don't. Like it's like how do you, when you stand on a surfboard, do you check for balance in every position, you know? So that when you're in the shower, do you do the same? Do you check for balance in every position? Snap. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like more in the mundane, the how you move, your demeanor, your what's the word? Your mannerisms.
Okay.
You know, so that's what I mean. Like how you do something is how you do everything. So like I wanna read books, and I'm gonna read them in fast forward.
Right, fast forward.
You know.
We're gonna call that the extra mile button. Just.
Yeah.
So it's funny you say, because like what you just brought up, I think really rings true back to like self-discipline, which I think also runs with self-love, right? Is like,
but also it's the same, right? Like how you do something is how you do everything. If you have self-discipline, you have it in all aspects of what you're doing.
I talk about that with my kids all the time. I'm like, look, nobody wants to clean the bathroom, but everybody wants a clean bathroom, right? So like it's not what you're doing, is what will be done. Like, you know what I mean?
And you don't clean the bathroom and do like this and just do it to say you did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You'll be back in there because Dad's not accepting that one. So, but yeah, I mean, that's right. Like nobody wants to wash dishes, but everybody wants to make sure everybody wants a clean dish when it's time to use a dish. So same thing, you know, and that's the thing about what we're doing today. Like everybody wants 11 businesses. You know what I mean? Yeah. But nobody wants to build 11 businesses, right? Isn't that true though?
Yeah.
Like, especially in a day and age where like the entrepreneurial like phrase, title, image is sold and just like pushed towards our entire community. Like everybody wants to be an entrepreneur today. And it's the knowledge of what it took to get to where you are.
Yeah.
And the things that you learn along the way, it's like, understand, like, this is not easy. You're not just going to, you know, magically create an Instagram and be rich. It's not how this works.
There's some really hard knocks along the way.
Exactly. Yeah. Some head bumps.
Yeah.
So, all right. So one of the questions I also wanted to ask you was, what should I have asked you that I haven't already asked you because I didn't know enough to ask it about you? Like, what question do you wish would have been asked?
I wish you would have asked me my favorite color.
Really?
No. But you can.
We can expand on that. What's your favorite color?
I don't have one.
Oh, okay. Make it green. I like green.
I can't commit. I love them all.
The rainbow.
Yes, that's my favorite color. It's the rainbow. No, just kidding. What could you have asked me? Well, there was a question on there you actually didn't ask me. Let me see. Oh, my 18-year-old self.
Oh, yeah. See, the reason I skipped over that one was because we talked so much about like that time frame. But yeah, let's do that. If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Actually, I don't want to tell her anything. So she's good. But I would what would have been amazing is to have like a real mentor. Like somebody who really looked at me and said, and I did. I mean, I'm not complaining to those people who have been huge influences on my life. Like I don't want anybody to feel like I didn't get what I needed, because I did in my own way. But I guess what I'm trying to say is how important it is to mentor our kids.
Oh yeah.
Like
100%.
it's, but not just to put your own agenda on them and say this is what you need to be doing, but really studying who they are as people and what makes them tick, and then what they can contribute to society at some point and be happy doing. So I wish that someone had come along sooner, and instead of letting me beat myself up for years because I didn't fit in, or letting me really kind of second guess myself in some of the decisions that I've made, and really had somebody to say, you're a visionary, and visionaries should follow this path, and it makes so much sense that you were not good at staying in school because you don't like rules and status quo, and it would have been nice to have somebody to say those things to me, and I think it goes back to the importance of really mentoring, and even your own kids, like taking your own kids on the path that they really need to be on, and making sure that they know that there's a place for them in this world, even if it's not in a factory and it's not with the general population, but there are plenty of things that they can be doing.
So huge.
Yeah.
So huge. And, that's something obviously I knew about you, that you have that interest too, because we've done this together. We've gone and we've spoke to the detention center kids, and you've done some work with some of the ladies' facilities too, which is awesome. So let's have a little bit of conversation about this, because you're so right. Like, I had no idea that what I'm doing today would ever be possible. Mm-hmm. Like, this is so beyond the expectations I had for myself. It is literally unbelievable to me sometimes. Sometimes I have to pull some time aside, look at the business or look at whatever, and I'm like, am I really doing this? Because I never in my wildest dreams thought that any of this was possible. And I think that message is what I try to deliver the most to them as well. It's like to the kids that had some kind of troubled experiences in the past and things like that. Like, I want them to know that there's so much more out there for them. There's so much beyond what they can see for themselves, that you can't give up. Like, you can't give up right now. And so, let's talk about that a little bit, because there must have been a point for you, just like there was for me, where the lives that we were living were a product of what we had seen, what we had done, what we became so comfortable doing. And then at what point for you was there a change where you thought, wow, Jill can do a lot more than what I ever really expected?
I don't know. There's been little clues along the way, when you have successes that happen, and then you can external locus of control, you can look at that and say, wow, I did that. I accomplished that. So I think the first thing was I got a full-time job. I've had a few full-time jobs, and early. Like, I had a full-time job at 16 because I dropped out of school, whatever. And there were so many responsibilities there. And at 16, I'm like on it. Like, I'm like building this book. I'm like selling these people. Like, I'm like running the thing. I was in the office by myself. The people lived an hour away. And so I was in there every day by myself. They didn't know if I was there or not, but I was literally like closing 6 people a day, building this book out, and so
that kind of that success.
There was this for I would say, when I was a teenager, it was really building up that self-worth, because I had lost it all for a little while, like without going 100%. Too far back. I think that that was an indication, like, oh shit, I can actually handle this, and then I really liked having a job. That particular job only lasted about a month because they ended up folding. They couldn't pay their bills, whatever. But I realized from that I really wanted a job. Like, how much self-worth I got from that was huge. So then I got, then I went and got the next job. And to get the next job, I had to quit smoking weed. I was afraid they were going to piss test me. So I quit smoking at that point at 17, and I've not smoked weed
Right. So like
barely ever since.
at that point though, like, did you expect that of yourself? Like, because obviously, you were at a point where you probably were like, oh, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And then when you stopped doing it, were you like, was there a moment of like realization, like, wait, did I just put like this job, did I just put myself first over top of like what?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
No. It was like, I've got to eat,
Okay.
My parents were
So still just
on
that,
their
like
own
the
adventures.
hunger, fear of failure type of shit, right?
It was a little bit of like, I'd been through a bunch of programs already where they tell you what to eat, what to wear, what time to go to bed. So it was a little bit of like, I'm not really cut out for that. Like if I want a piece of cake, I want to go buy a piece of cake,
Yeah.
So I think it's always been about like fulfilling my desires. So not just like the self-worth and the self-love thing, but like what do I really desire? And then having the ability to make that happen. Like I'm not the type of person to sit on the couch and be like, gosh, I really want a cheesesteak. Like, and just think that it's going to show up on my door. Like, I'm going to get on the phone. I'm going to do Instacart. I'm going to do, whatever.
Yeah.
Uber Eats at this point.
Yeah, if it's to be, it's up to me.
These are my favorite apps right now.
Yeah,
I love Instacart. Have you done that yet?
No.
Oh my gosh.
No, we haven't
so
done
happy
that
when
one.
they came to us. But anyway, I think really drilling down into what it was that I desired in the moment. So it was really more in the moment decisions for me that sort of builded on each other. How can you bring that child in here and then think that I'm not going to be like, give me that baby?
She's so cute. She's so cute.
Oh my goodness.
We'll have to put some shots of her into it so they know. She's a cutie. But what's really interesting about what you said is like those successes, they kind of serve, for me anyway, they served as stepping stones. And every single stepping stone, when I accomplished something, even the smallest of things, right? I got a job with a major retail store, so similar. That to me said, oh wow, you did this. You didn't think you could do this, so I wonder if you could do that.
What else can you do?
And so like I've said it a few times, and hopefully I'm not too repetitive on this podcast, but I say, you go as far as you can see. When you get there, you'll be able to see much further. That's true. So you keep going, right? And so for me, that's exact, because I tell you, every level of success I've reached, I'm like looking up at something else like, wow, I can do that now. Not looking back and saying, oh, wow, I did that. I'm like, wow, I can do that. And so it kind of told me the more I improve, the more I can improve.
I actually wish that I had more of that, like, I want to say myopic, but like shorter term vision. Like all of my stuff is like, has always been years and years and years, and so it's like, it takes a lot of character to get from here to there after so many years, but I don't have that like 90 days. What does the next 90 days look like? What does the next 6 months look like? Like for me, like I have to plan a year. I feel like a year is the minimum. It's hard for me to just be like, oh, what's 30 days like?
No, I think that's true for me too.
Something I'm trying to cultivate a little bit more too.
That's true for me too. I definitely look far out there. There was a quote that sat with me a long time ago, and it was, the most successful people in life plant trees under which they know they'll never sit.
Wow.
And I'm like, holy,
oh my gosh, I'm going to cry.
Smokes,
That's huge.
Right? It's deep, right?
Yeah.
So, but, and I'm sure you can relate to this too, because what we're doing is changing, because, I mean, obviously it changed our paths, right? But think of your son and like my daughters, like their whole lives have been impacted by decisions that we're making today.
Yeah.
And then, so how is that going to impact their, grandkids and like kids I might not ever meet?
Yeah.
And so for me, maybe that's a little selfish in that way to think that I can impact somebody so far out.
I don't think so.
But if I can, I want to.
I think for a visionary, like a deep desire may be to leave a legacy. Like look at Disney.
My name is Bobby Jones. I got to do something significant. Nobody's going to remember that. So it's kind of funny you mentioned that too, because my grandparents were local to this area, and like they were here for years and years and years and years. And when I ask people about them, never heard of them.
Wow.
No, and I'm like, man, I want to have left something behind. I don't want a high school named after me or anything, but I want to leave something behind.
I'm with you on that. But I was also like, just recently, I've been thinking a lot about December does this to me. Like I get into like this December reflection, and like I go into like this really dark space. And so I've been thinking, I watched the weirdest documentaries.
Hit us with it.
I watched the Bill Gates documentary. This is not the one I'm going to talk about.
Oh, okay.
That was actually pretty good. Talking about the things that he wants to do in the world and his legacy. It's pretty good. But then I watched Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh, I'm sure that's pretty good.
Oh my gosh, it was so good. But it was like, her legacy is left with like my mom, but my mom's 70. You know what I'm saying? So like at some point,
Right.
even legacies die. I mean, again, unless you're like Disney and you can just
Sure.
create something that keeps on living without you, which is pretty incredible. I mean, I don't know if there's another example. I mean, there's Ford.
Yeah. Ford.
Ford.
But yeah, I'm sure there's a few others.
Carnegie.
Well,
I
Apple
don't think
kind of,
any-
right? Because they're, he's not
Yeah.
around
I
anymore.
mean, that's
but
our.
yeah.
That's our.
It's still kind of recent,
now.
much more
Yeah,
recent.
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
Carnegie's one. That's a good one.
Rockefeller.
Yeah. Shoot. Okay. So I wanted to get, so that's huge for me too. Like I want to leave something behind. Like I want to leave my mark on the world. And again, back when I was experiencing my troubles and the adversity that I was having, I never expected any of this, right? So like when we talk about like these self-limiting beliefs that people have about like what their school teacher told them or what their parents said to them or even sometimes it's just what the people around them have accomplished. And so they feel like that's all they can accomplish just off of the pure placement in the environment, right? And the people around them. And so, like, what would your advice be to somebody who's living in that world right now where they don't believe that they can do, what you and I have done, stepped out of that norm and broke through those walls? Like, what would you tell somebody who's just afraid that they can't do it?
I think there's probably two things that they could do. You definitely got to get with some different people, right? So that's part of, I do believe that is a big part of how I got
Huge.
rehabbed, was because I got into so many programs and I got around so many people who had different energy and different beliefs, and they infused some of that into me, and I took what I could from them. Especially being a woman, there was a lot of discussion around self-respect, which wasn't a topic in my house. Not that it wasn't,
Sure.
there, but it just wasn't something we talked about. So that was huge for me early on. Getting around people that have different mentalities. So in this day and time, I mean, it's pretty easy to go get a mentor.
Yeah,
I'd say,
it is.
Find a mentor and get a mentor. That'd be one thing. But if finding a mentor is out of reach, getting a mentor, definitely books. I mean, like when we were kids, like little kids, they were like reading is empowerment and reading is blah, blah, blah. Like it's all kind of corny, but it's so true. You can literally pick up a book and be in a different world, in a different space, in a different energy, in a different vibe in 5 seconds.
100%.
For me, 2.5, but
Yeah. So you're absolutely right though, because like we're told all these different things, and even, like you said, it's corny. You pick up a book and do this, but
readers are leaders.
Yeah.
Leaders are
How
readers.
cheesy was it that we were being told that you can do anything that you put your mind to, or you could do anything if you put put the
That
work in.
is so true,
It's
though.
so true,
It
but it's
really
like
is.
we look at that phrase and we're like, yeah, right.
And
like,
if you're right,
but
if
it's
you're
so
but
real.
here to my point, if you're hard-headed and that's something that you experience, you hear yourself say that, pick up 15, 20, 25 books. Literally all of them will say the same thing. And they can't all be saying the same thing for no reason.
Right.
Like at some point you have to, if like when I have irrational fears, I try to hit them with logic, and so that I can, get rid of them. And so that would be a logical way to get rid of your irrational fear, is to like listen to all these people who have written all these books about anything you actually can think about, you can do. It's true.
Yeah, and so that's the thing too, is like, and I talk to a lot of people that want to start businesses, and I'm constantly told, oh, well, I got to go take this course, or I got to go get this degree, or I need funding. And like, we're so programmed to create excuses on why we can't do something. But the reality is like the books, the audiobooks, like that's all the information I've ever been able to acquire is in regard to business or sales or anything like that.
You just have a lot of guts. I mean, you
Well, I'm
really
just saying-
have a lot of guts. I mean, there's some people that really do. They can't get past the step of the course. They have to take the course. And
Right.
and if that's the excuse, cool.
Oh, I know that. It's about
Cool.
self-awareness.
Take the time.
For sure.
Take the course and then be on your way. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like planting that tree, right? So if the course is your tree, then get it over with. Get it done and then move on. Stop saying I got to do this first. I got to do this first. Just get it done. And then you won't have to keep saying you have to do it first.
Yeah, you're so right. Like I have really done, like I've really had the self-awareness to know that, like, obviously you're different, right, than a lot of people that we're going to be communicating with in this regard. I'm different. And you saying that I have the guts, for me, it was like, what the fuck do I have to lose?
It's also
like I never had a fear of losing.
Yeah.
And it couldn't get any worse than where I was, so I just went full speed ahead.
I think it could be fear.
There were naysayers along the way,
yeah,
right? And that's something too that we hear
fear
a lot.
is very real, like to people. Like it's a personal thing, you know. So fear that I have, you'll be like, that's nothing. You know what I'm saying? But
True.
like,
Oh, yeah,
I'm
100%.
experiencing it as a very real thing. Like it causes
Absolutely.
chemical reactions in your body, your heart
100%.
pounding, you start sweating. You know, there's things that happen to you if you are in fear.
Yeah.
And so if you need your blankie to go into the kitchen when it's dark, go get your freaking blankie and go in the kitchen.
Right.
Like at some point you can face that demon, but if you need to get to the kitchen, go get your damn blankie
Correct.
and get in the kitchen. You know what I'm saying? So like if you need to go take the course, hurry up.
Yep.
And then move on your way.
Just fucking do it.
Yeah.
Like, get started.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really deep. You know, we could talk about this stuff all day, but
Yeah.
the bottom line is like, if you're teeter-tottering and you're trying to start a business or you want to get out there and start a business, just do it. Like, don't sit, because by the time you get started going through all the stuff that you're saying you have to do, you're going to have lost all that time you could have been actually grinding and actually working.
Take some steps. I mean, like, you know, if you and I had a discussion today that you're going to start a business tomorrow, you'd be like, you'd have sold 50 million worth of whatever. So that's you.
Yeah,
but
of
like,
course.
But like some people just go get your business license, you know, take that step and then get your insurance and then take that step and then open your bank account and then like every day do something.
Yes.
Towards
Just don't
that
have
goal.
a great idea and then go to someday I'll go get my business license. Someday I'll get my logo created. Someday I'll get my website
So
done.
I have a mentor now, and that's like one thing like she chokes up about every time is she calls it, I'm going to do it too, the unlived life, where you don't actually go through with anything that you desire, or you don't follow your dreams, or it's like.
So that brings us back to a word that we didn't like today: regret.
Yeah.
When we're at that moment in life, looking back, I don't want to have the regrets that so many people have at that moment. And like, if you're unfamiliar with that, you know, Gary Vee says it all the time, like, go spend some time in a nursing home.
Yeah.
And hear the regrets of people. And if that doesn't inspire you to get
Brandon
up and live your
Bouchard,
life
too.
today.
He talks about when he was in a really bad car accident that he was trying to find the meaning of life. He was like 18 or 19 or 20 or something like that. And he went and worked at a nursing home.
Yeah.
And he said every person that he spoke to, every single one of them, only talked about what they regretted.
What they wish they'd have done.
Yep. Not that they were glad they worked so hard or any of that at a job or.
That's why I'm so against the idea. I know we're running out of time, but I'm so against the idea of this retirement. Like, what do you mean retirement?
Yeah.
Like, I'm supposed to work my ass off until I'm 65 and then I can have fun and enjoy my life?
Yeah.
Like, no. I'm going to enjoy my life along the way.
Yeah.
And I'm going to enjoy my life then too. Read a story recently where, you know, 60-year-old police chief retired. Like, they bought a house in Florida, and like 3 weeks after they got down there, he died of a heart attack.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? This man busted his ass all that time in the dream and pursuit of retirement and never got to see a moment of it. And that's, for me, like, that's it. That's why, like, the time is crucial. The moment is crucial. Like, if you have a dream, get to work on that dream, because you don't want to be that person wishing you'd have done it.
Even if you're unhappy with the situation, I think.
Oh yeah, that's
making the
again
change. Yeah.
the very idea of success has to be wrapped around happiness. Like, if you're defining it any other way, we're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
It's got to be that first, because I can tell you, I've made a shit ton of money and I've been very poor before. And I'll tell you what, the one thing in both situations was my happiness. Like, that, I would have never given up that.
Yeah.
In those moments. Like, the money could go, like I said earlier, I could lose it all tomorrow and I'll be perfectly fine. I've been there before. I'm very familiar with it. I'm very familiar with that. So it doesn't scare me one bit. So listen, we're going to get closed up here. I'm going to have you back on the show though, because this was an awesome conversation. I think that we can expand on some more stuff next time too.
Good.
So we're wrapping up episode 4. So thank you for being our guest on episode 4 of the Extra Mile podcast. I do want our viewers to know where to find you. not to creep or anything, guys, but if you want to contact Jill, I want them to make sure that they know social media, whatever, which way.
Yeah, I'm on
get in
Instagram
contact.
as Jill Sussman1. You'll spell my name somewhere.
Yes,
Yeah,
we'll put it on the
so
screen.
Jill Sussman1. And you can check me out there. Send me a DM if you want to have a call or whatever. Just let me know.
Awesome. All right, guys. So thank you for tuning in. Again, we're going to be putting out the next episode in 2 weeks. So these are going to be released bi-weekly. So stay tuned for episode 5 of the Extra Mile podcast. And Jill, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys.
Yay! Give me that baby. Whose baby is it?